Sunday morning, sometime in 1974. The smell of cut grass is already drifting through the kitchen window, your dad's disappeared into the shed for the third time before breakfast, and your mum's out on the lawn in her housecoat, pegging wet sheets onto something that spins round in the wind like a giant metal spider. Somewhere near the back fence there's a smell of smoke that has nothing to do with the barbecue, because nobody in this street had heard of a barbecue yet. Further along, someone's dad is on his knees on the crazy paving with a spirit level and a face like it's a matter of national importance, and 2 doors down a gnome has been sitting in exactly the same spot by the pond since before anyone in the house could remember. The garden wasn't decoration. It was half allotment, half workshop, half battlefield against whatever the weather was about to do, and every single house on the road ran to almost exactly the same layout. You didn't notice it at the time because it was simply how every garden looked. Here are the things every British garden had in the 1970s, and you'd only understand them properly if you actually grew up wandering round one. 1. The greenhouse. A rickety aluminium frame with glass panels, usually leaning slightly, standing at the far end of the garden and filled with tomato plants tied to canes with old strips of tights, alongside a grow bag or two and a watering can that never seemed to be where you'd left it. Aluminium-framed greenhouses became affordable enough for ordinary families through the post-war decades, and by the 1970s, a small one was practically standard equipment for anyone who fancied themselves halfway serious about growing their own. The gentle irony is how much heat and argument went into a handful of tomatoes that would have cost almost nothing at the greengrocer's. As fewer households bothered growing their own veg and gardens themselves got smaller through the following decades, the humble backyard greenhouse became far rarer, though it never entirely vanished from the more dedicated gardens. 2. The Rotary washing line, a single metal pole with arms radiating outward like a giant umbrella, strung with line and rotating slowly in the wind so your mum only had to walk round it once instead of up and down a straight line twice. It became a fixture of British back gardens through the 1950s and into the 70s, standing in almost exactly the same spot in every garden on the street, usually dead centre of the lawn. The dry joke is that half the fun of being a child in that garden was giving the whole thing an almighty spin the second nobody was looking, sheets and all. It's one of the few things on this list that never really disappeared, and in fact it's had something of a quiet comeback recently, for reasons your mum could probably have explained to anyone back then. 3. The garden shed. Every dad had one, and every dad's shed contained roughly the same things: a paraffin can, a rusting saw, seed packets from 3 summers ago, and at least one tool nobody could remember the actual purpose of, hanging on a nail exactly where it had always hung. It smelled of creosote, damp wood, and cut grass, and stepping inside felt like stepping into somewhere that belonged to your dad alone, a small kingdom with its own particular silence. There's something quietly funny about how sacred a small wooden box could become purely through the amount of time spent doing very little inside it. The shed itself has never gone away, but what happens inside it has changed considerably, since broken things now usually get replaced from a shop rather than mended at the workbench. 4. The Rockery. A mound of soil built up with lumps of stone wedged into it, planted with alpine flowers, sedums, and the odd creeping succulent, the rockery was considered genuinely fashionable through the 1960s and into the 70s, often built as a weekend project with stones scavenged from wherever anyone could get them cheaply, sometimes a builder's skip, sometimes a farmer's field with a nod and a wink. The gentle irony is that a feature built to look like a tiny, deliberate mountain range usually ended up looking more like a pile of rubble with flowers growing out of it. As garden design moved toward lower maintenance, more naturalistic planting from the 1990s onward, the rockery slid from fashionable to faintly embarrassing, and plenty were quietly dismantled by the following generation. 5. Crazy paving. A patio made from irregular broken slabs of stone, fitted together like a jigsaw with no two pieces the same shape, then filled in with mortar between the gaps. Through the 1970s, it was considered the height of patio sophistication, and a weekend spent laying it by hand was practically a rite of passage for any dad with a spirit level and too much confidence. The dry joke is that crazy turned out to be exactly the right word, since the pattern rarely made sense and the gaps were forever sprouting weeds regardless of how carefully it had been laid. Regular rectangular slabs and later decking took over through the 1980s and 90s, and crazy paving became one of the most instantly dateable features a garden could have. 6. The coal bunker. A squat concrete or asbestos cement box standing against the house wall, refilled every few weeks by the coalman backing his lorry up the road and tipping sack after sack in through the hatch, while everyone kept their washing well away from the road that day. Every house that still burned coal for its fires needed one, and the particular gritty black dust around its base never fully washed away no matter how often anyone tried. There's a quiet irony in how solid and permanent those bunkers looked, built to outlast the house around them. As gas central heating spread rapidly through British homes during the 1970s and 80s, following the conversion of the country's gas supply to North Sea gas, the coal bunkers' job disappeared almost entirely, and most of them still stand today, empty, holding nothing but a bicycle or a bag of sand. 7. The cane wigwam for runner beans. A tall teepee of bamboo canes tied together at the top with string, standing at the back of the vegetable patch, climbed by runner beans until the whole structure disappeared under a wall of green leaves and bright red flowers by midsummer, buzzing quietly with bees the whole day through. Nearly every garden with any pretension to growing its own food had one somewhere near the fence. The gentle joke is that the wigwam always looked slightly more impressive than whatever modest handful of beans it eventually produced. As fewer families grew their own vegetables and gardens themselves shrank through the later decades, the cane wigwam became a far rarer sight, kept alive mostly by the more dedicated allotment holders. 8. The cold frame. A low wooden or brick box topped with an old sheet of glass or a discarded window used to harden off young seedlings before they were considered tough enough for the greenhouse or the open ground. It sat quietly at the edge of the vegetable patch, propped open on warm days with a stick and shut firmly the moment frost threatened, checked every evening without fail before anyone went in for tea. It's a small, patient piece of engineering, essentially a halfway house for plants not quite ready for the real world. As garden centres began selling bedding plants already grown to a decent size from the 1980s onward, fewer households bothered starting everything from seed themselves, and the humble cold frame quietly fell out of everyday use. 9. The water butt. A wooden barrel or plastic drum stood under a downpipe at the corner of the house, catching rainwater off the roof to use on the vegetable patch rather than running the tap. It was simply common sense at the time. Not an environmental statement, just a sensible way of not wasting something that was falling from the sky anyway. The gentle irony is that what was once pure thrift has since been repackaged as a lifestyle choice, sold in garden centres with considerably more marketing than the plain old barrel ever needed. It's one of the few items on this list that's actually become more common again in recent years, for reasons that would have made perfect sense to anyone standing in that garden in 1974. 10. The compost heap. Not a bin, just a heap, usually tucked behind the shed where nobody had to look at it, built up from grass cuttings, vegetable peelings, and whatever else the household didn't want, left to slowly rot down into something genuinely useful for next year's beds. Turning it over with a fork was a job nobody volunteered for twice. There's something almost defiant about a system that required no equipment at all beyond patience and a shed to hide it behind. as councils began providing proper compost bins as part of wider recycling schemes from the 1990s and 2000s onward, the casual, slightly chaotic heap in the corner gradually gave way to something tidier, more contained, and considerably less interesting to poke at with a stick. 11. The bonfire corner. A patch of bare, blackened ground near the back fence where garden rubbish, hedge trimmings, and anything else that wouldn't fit in the bin got piled up and burned, sending a plume of smoke drifting over the neighbour's washing at the worst possible moment, usually the exact minute it had just gone up on the line. It reached its absolute peak every November, building for weeks before the 5th, and then finally getting its proper night with a guy on top, and everyone stood well back. The dry joke is that the same smoke everyone tolerated without complaint for most of the year suddenly became a diplomatic incident the moment it drifted over freshly hung sheets. Rising awareness of smoke and air quality, along with councils introducing garden waste collection services through the 1990s and 2000s, gradually made the casual back garden bonfire far less common and far less welcome. 12. The Rhubarb Patch. Under a bucket, tucked into a shady, slightly neglected corner where nothing else seemed to grow, the rhubarb patch needed almost no attention at all, and an old bucket or terracotta forcer placed over the crown in early spring would coax up pale, tender, faintly sweet stalks weeks before the rest of the plant caught up, ready for a crumble long before anything else in the garden had produced a thing. It was one of the oldest tricks in a British garden, and almost everyone's nan seemed to know it, passed down without ever once being written on paper. There's a quiet charm in a vegetable that thrived specifically on being ignored for 11 months of the year, as rhubarb itself fell out of fashion as a pudding through the later decades, and fewer gardens kept a permanent semi-wild corner for it. The whole ritual of forcing your own quietly became something only the more old-fashioned gardeners bothered keeping up. 13. The privet hedge. A dense dark green boundary running along the front of nearly every house on the street, clipped by hand with a pair of long-bladed shears into something approaching a straight line, or occasionally not, depending on how much of the afternoon your dad had already lost to it. Before electric hedge trimmers became a common household purchase through the 1970s, keeping it tidy was a proper Saturday job, arms aching long before the job was finished, clippings swept up into a wheelbarrow and taken round the back. The gentle irony is how uniform an entire street could look purely because everyone had chosen, without ever discussing it, exactly the same hedge. As more front gardens were paved over for parking and mixed, decorative hedging became more fashionable. The once universal privet became a far less automatic choice for a new boundary. 14. The garden gnome ceramic, and later plastic, usually fishing, wheelbarrowing, or simply standing with a pipe and a slightly knowing grin. The garden gnome sat somewhere near the rockery or the pond, entirely unbothered by how seriously anyone else took gardening as a pursuit. Nobody could quite say when theirs had arrived, only that it had always been there, weathering slightly more each summer, paint fading a little further on the pipe and the hat. The dry joke is that gnomes became a genuine mark of shame among the more design-conscious gardeners, to the point that they were famously barred from the Chelsea Flower Show for decades. They never stopped being loved in ordinary back gardens, even while professional horticulture quietly turned its nose up at them, which rather suggests the gnomes were doing something right all along. 15. The stripy deck chair. A wooden folding frame with a length of canvas stretched between the arms, usually striped in faded reds, blues or greens, dragged out onto the lawn the moment the sun looked even faintly committed to staying out, and immediately fought over by whoever got there first, getting the angle right and getting back out of it afterwards without an audience laughing. Both required a certain amount of practice. There's something quietly perfect about a piece of furniture built entirely around the idea of doing absolutely absolutely nothing for an afternoon. As plastic recliners and cushioned sun loungers took over garden centres through the 1980s and beyond, the old canvas deck chair became less of an everyday object and more of a specifically nostalgic one, folded up and largely forgotten at the back of the shed. Picture that deck chair now, canvas gone slightly grey, leaning against the inside wall of a shed that hasn't been properly cleared out in years, waiting for a summer that never quite gets round to using it again. Somewhere near it, a rockery long since colonised by weeds, a coal bunker holding nothing but an old bicycle wheel, a gnome still facing the pond that isn't there anymore. That's what's left of most of this now, ordinary objects standing in for an entire way of spending a Sunday that doesn't happen the same way anymore. Which of these did your garden have, and which one do you wish you'd never let go of? Tell me down in the comments, and if any of this took you straight back to a Sunday afternoon on the lawn, pass it along to someone who'd remember it too. Stick around and subscribe. There are plenty more of these gardens still to unpack.